Today on Awakening with Amy, how to let go of the ego and manifest your desires effortlessly. Welcome, I'm Amy Valentine, certified life coach, here to awaken within you your ideal life so you can have any desire. And today I had a subscriber, Joe, request me doing a video on the ego. So that's what we're going to delve in today. We're going to unpack the ego and how it relates to manifesting our desires. And, understanding the ego, having that awareness is huge because, look, you can manifest. We're manifesting all the time anyway. We don't need to learn how to manifest, but we do want to become aware from who are we being when we are creating our reality, right? Consciously or unconsciously. And awareness is always the first key. So I think we've all heard that term, let go and let God, right? What does that even mean? What are we letting go of? Well, we're letting go of the mind chatter, the ego, that voice that says, I'm not enough. In coaching circles, they call it sometimes the gremlin. It's that part of us that we talked about last video that was handed down to us, that we picked up and absorbed the frequency and the energy of the people around us. And then we thought it was ours. We think the ego is who we are, but it's not. That egoic mind is really the conscious mind, the physical mind that is always analyzed, always thinking, always judging and labeling. And it's just that mind chatter going. But the powerful thing is when you consciously direct it, now you bypass that nonsense, right? You bypass the negative voice so you can hear the higher mind, your soul, and that's who you really are. You're not your thoughts. You're not your ideas. You're not your physical body. You're not your ego. Who you really are is a soul that came into a physical body, which is the camouflage of life, like Seth said through Jane Roberts, that the physical mind, the ego, is a camouflage. It's the mask. It's the character we play in the game of life, right? And then when we transcend and die and go back into non-physical, like all those near-death experiences, if you listen to any of them, they say you still are aware, you still have that consciousness, but you lose the ego, you lose the personality. You're still a unique aspect, a source of that divine source, but you drop the ego. So we can learn to do that here and now in a physical body, and then you manifest whatever you want with no effort, or at least on the path of least resistance. So again, the ego mind is just a construct. It's just an idea that comes from the filter of fear. That's all it is. And what we want to do is learn to say to all those thoughts that do not serve us, all those destructive thoughts, they are here to show us the source of our unhappiness. When we learn to incorporate the ego voice instead of fighting it, when we learn to respond to that egoic structure, that mind chatter, instead of reacting to it, now we take our power back. Now we can create what we want. Because you can create. We're creating all the time. We don't need to learn how to manifest. We're manifesting machines. We're manifesting all the time, whether we know it or not. And a lot of people manifest from the ego, manifest boatloads of money. They manifest lack. They manifest relationships. They manifest jobs, whatever. But it's never enough, right? It's never, ever enough because the ego is always, I am not enough. It's always confused and it's always in chaos. It's always judging things as right, wrong. It's always telling you that you have to try harder, that you're your physical body. When you get wrapped up in that and you think that's who you are, then you're disconnected, right? You can't hear that higher voice. And so you give your power away to the idols. Like A Course in Miracles says, the ego's voice that tells you that you are your body, that you are the amount of money you have, that you are your mental prowess. That's lying to you, right? It's just not true. Who you really are is unconditional, the presence behind that mask, the mask of the ego. So that soul, that higher mind is who you are, your I am awareness. And let's read a quote from Neville Goddard and tie this and go deeper into how we can use the ego and to manifest our desires, really bypass the ego, to manifest what we really, really want. The spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. The most creative thing in us is to believe a thing into objective existence. Neville Goddard. The spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. Neville tells us right there, all desires are about us claiming it. But the natural man, the ego, who we think we are, the physical mind, gets in there and starts saying, no, you can't do that. You don't have experience. You're not enough. You're not old enough. You're not young enough. You're too young. You're too old. You're this. It's always, I am not. And when you hear that voice, I am not, that's the ego is present, blocking you from your desire, because the ego doesn't want you to expand, because the ego is always in the past, or it's worried about the future. It's never present, right? It's never just neutral. It doesn't discern. Like Neville says, be the uncritical observer. So we have to have that knowledge of who we really are, right? Not buying into that we're just that physical body. No. So we want to befriend the mind. We want to have no conflict with it. That's what Neville really means by being the uncritical observer. Have no conflict with your mind. We want to beyond accept what is, allowing it all just to be there, knowing that we're new in every moment, like Bashar says. We are literally new, moment to moment to moment to moment. We can hit the reset button any time. So we want to let go of the judgment, because really judgment, positive or negative, is limiting. And the ego is all about limitation. And the higher mind, who we really are, the soul, knows we're limitless. We're here to wake up to that we are really completely unlimited being, not limited by a physical body. No, we're here to use that knowledge of who we really are to transcend any thought that the ego mind could ever tell us, right? So everything you desire, you already have within you. Everything you desire is beyond the voice of the ego. And the only reason why you don't think you already have your desire is because you're identifying with that voice of the ego, right? So how do we go beyond it, right? Well, remind yourself, like I just said, that we're new in every moment, that consciousness is only now. The universe is only responding to my now vibration. That's why when you think about a past event or a past memory, you're doing it in the now moment. So you're not even the same person. Isn't it wild? We're always different. So it's not really helpful to think about the past and regret and ruminate, and because we really have no true knowledge of what we were thinking 5 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. It doesn't matter. Again, like Bashar says, we're new in every moment. And like Neville said, the spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. Desire is that urge to expand, right? So how we bypass that ego voice is not to resist it. not to fight it, to know that it's here to help us, to show us that that's not who we are, to show us that we are the source, the only cause, who we believe we are, of all our happiness and all our unhappiness. That is the power, because the ego is always going to tell you you're a victim. You're limited to your circumstances. The spiritual self, the higher mind, is going to tell you circumstances don't matter. And how you know what voice to listen to is how it feels, your emotional guidance system. The ego's voice always feels constricting and limiting. And the higher voice always feels expansive and unlimited. It's your whole freedom from any dissatisfaction, from any unwanted scenario. Freedom from that voice of the ego is pointing to your I am awareness, who you really are. Knowing that you were made in the image and likeness of the creator, of source energy, of that infinite intelligence, and it's always with you here and now. But if you're listening to the voice of the ego, or fighting the ego, or reacting to life, you're not going to hear that higher call. So how do we move beyond that voice of the ego and remind ourselves that this physicalness is just a mask and not to fight it? Well, there's 3 kind of pillars to move beyond that voice of the ego and remember who we really are. And it's really the essence of the law of assumption that Neville teaches. 1 is repetition. We want to repeatedly remind ourselves of our true nature, our spiritual nature. I am that I am. Sometimes I just say to myself, I am. And what that does, it quiets the mind chatter, right? Because you're just pointing. Now you're putting your awareness on your I amness, right? And repeating that instead of listening to the confusion and the quagmire of the ego mind, right? Number 2 is persistence. You want to persist in your wish fulfilled. And what Neville means by that, it's not an efforting to persist, it's persisting of the love, of the desire, knowing the desire came to me because it's mine to have, to actually manifest, to experience in a physical reality, right? So persistence, frequently returning to the end of fulfillment, unconditionally, right? Not defining yourself through the outer world. You get to say who and what you are, moment to moment. The ego is going to tell you to define yourself through the outer world, through your bank account, through your job, through your relationships. No, that's the ego confusing you. No, persist in fulfillment, period. Knowing that's who you really are already. It's beyond the mask, beyond the camouflage. Going beyond the ego is where all true happiness and fulfillment lies. And number 3 is inner conviction. We already are that inner conviction. That's I am that I am, right? That I amness is who we are, so we don't have to effort. We just have to drop and let go of that ego thinking that's who we are and keep going back to that inner conviction. No, I'm letting go of the struggle. I have no conflict with my mind. I have no conflict with anything. I'm going to allow everything to exist. And I'm going to consult that inner conviction of my soul, of the higher mind, of that divine me that's always connected, always plugged in to infinite intelligence. So it will take care of me. So remind yourself that when the ego's voice is present, when that dissatisfaction story comes in, when that I am not enough story comes in, tell yourself, stop, be present in the moment, and tell yourself, how is this serving me? How is this loving me? How is this nurturing me? Why? Because all that dissatisfaction, all that negative mind chatter is trying to serve you because it really wants direction, because it's really seeking balance. It's seeking alignment. It doesn't know how to do it though, so you have to consciously direct it. And that's how you do it, by repeating who you really are. I am, your I amness, by persisting in the end of fulfillment, training your mind to see fulfillment and only fulfillment. And 3, pointing to that inner conviction that when I let go of struggle and effort and the ego of thinking that's who I am, that who I really am is just beyond that, and it just naturally rises with no effort. And this is how you bypass that ego mind, how you let it go and let God, let source energy take over and manifest your desires through you as you. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for liking and sharing the video. Thank you for commenting. And thank you for subscribing. I'm so happy you're here. And until next time, have a wonderful day.